This series contains adult language and depictions of graphic violence. Listener discretion is advised. It was late December 1993, and Jimmy Donegan was a senior at Eastside High in Paterson, New Jersey. For weeks, he'd been looking forward to the holiday celebration at his high school, not only because there'd be girls there, but also because it marked the beginning of winter break. No school for almost 3 weeks. So yeah, he was excited as he got dressed in his favorite outfit, black jeans, flannel shirt. Remember, New Jersey was grunge before grunge was cool, and a fresh pair of Jordan 8s. As he pulled into the parking lot of his school, he was happy to see a huge turnout. Tons of his classmates in line to get into what amounted to a school dance. He could hear the sounds of the DJ as he walked up and greeted a few of his friends. Again, it was a great turnout, despite the weather not exactly cooperating. There had been snow flurries earlier that day that turned briefly into what's called a wintry mix of rain and snow before finally the weather had cleared and a cold front had moved in that would likely hang over the tri-state area until at least after the new year. But inside, it was warm and loud and festive. Just the place for a bunch of teenagers at the beginning of a long vacation. Jimmy was in mid-conversation with his buddies about the upcoming NFL playoffs when he saw her walk in. Monica Williams. Monica was a senior and lived down the block from Jimmy. She was tall and beautiful, with black hair and blue eyes, and the nicest smile that Jimmy had ever seen. The two had been aware of each other for the last few months, each waiting for the other to make some kind of overture that announced amorous intentions, but neither ever mustered up the courage. But now time was running out. They'd both be leaving for college within 6 months. So Jimmy decided that it was now or never. Welcome back to The Devil Within. You're listening to Campfire Stories, Part 4. Monica watched Jimmy as he made his way through the crowd and wondered, is he coming to see me? When it was clear that he was indeed intent on breaking the ice, Monica felt butterflies in her stomach and her hands started sweating. She'd been waiting for this, it seemed, her entire life. Life is quirky sometimes, and this was one of those times, because for all the nerves and fear felt by Jimmy and Monica, the moment they began talking, it was comfortable and intimate and exciting and, well, easy. They slow danced to the Bryan Adams hit Everything I Do. They had their picture taken with Santa in front of the Christmas tree, and they talked about spending more time together over the break. At one point, Jimmy noticed that a strand of tinsel from the Christmas tree had made its way into Monica's hair, but he didn't tell her. She looked perfect, and the tinsel only added a magical touch to her already incredible beauty. As the clock ticked toward 11 p.m., Monica said she had to get home and asked Jimmy for a ride. She explained that she was late to the dance because of a little fender bender caused by the icy roads on the way there, so she didn't have her car. Of course, Jimmy obliged, and the two left the dance into the chilly winter evening. Driving out of the city of Paterson, you're very quickly in the countryside of northern New Jersey. Woods and dark roads for miles. As they approached Monica's house, police and ambulance lights slowly came into view, and when they were just a few blocks away, the road became completely closed. Monica told Jimmy, "Don't worry, just drop me off here, I'll walk the rest of the way." Although reluctant, Jimmy knew she'd be home in a few minutes. Besides, there were cops everywhere, so he knew she'd be safe. They said their goodbyes and promised each other they'd get together soon. Jimmy watched her walk away in his rearview mirror until he rounded a bend and all the police lights faded out of sight, along with Monica. It was then that he realized that she'd left her sweater in his car. Not a big deal, he could get it to her in the morning. But it was a great excuse to see her again real quick and to show himself to be a concerned, gentlemanly type of guy. So he made a quick U-turn and hurried back to catch up with her before she got to her house. As Jimmy once again approached all the police activity, he quickly scanned the street for any sign of Monica, but nothing. She couldn't have gotten more than a block away. He was gone less than a minute. The road to Monica's house was still closed, so Jimmy parked his car and started walking, following the path that she took. Moments later, he learned why all the police and emergency vehicles were out. The car had been almost completely wrapped around a massive oak tree in what must have been a terrible car accident. As he passed the scene, he realized the driver was still pinned in the wreckage. A young woman who looked just like Monica. Jimmy asked one of the cops what had happened. The cop replied, "Car accident a few hours ago. We'd been waiting on additional equipment to extract the driver. She didn't make it, unfortunately." It was at that moment that another police officer shined his flashlight into the mangled vehicle, and Jimmy realized that it was Monica. And there, reflecting the lights of the police cruisers, was a single piece of tinsel that somehow, only minutes earlier, had reflected the lights of the Christmas tree at the high school dance. Okay, so this is a story called The Wreck. It's one of several variations of a classic horror story that has its own subsection within the genre called The Hitchhiker. There's always some kind of chance encounter, right? A random hitchhiker, a meet cute at the high school dance. The story then turns when we find out that the person is actually dead, either for a long period of time, or in the case of The Wreck, only very recently deceased. One version of the story has the same hitchhiker getting picked up on the same day every year. They have the driver drop them off at a specific address, but when they arrive, the hitchhiker has vanished, all except for some personal item that proves they were really there. And the drop-off location? Usually it's the parents' house, and we learn that the person that was picked up had died along that stretch of road, and every year on the anniversary of their death, they appear and ask for a ride home. Another version of the story takes place on Omaha Beach on D-Day. A young private storms the beach with his platoon, and while he's normally a very scared and ineffective soldier, on this day he finds the hero within himself and saves the lives of dozens of his fellow soldiers while laying waste to every Nazi that comes across his path. For 30 minutes, he's the bravest man who ever lived, and is told by his commander that he's going to be recommended for the Medal of Honor. But just as his platoon is about to attack another machine gun nest and everyone is convinced that he's going to take the lead, the man's gone. He's vanished. As reinforcements arrive, the commander asks everyone he sees if they have any idea where this war hero has gone. War hero? One of the newly arriving soldiers asks. What are you talking about? That guy took a bullet the moment his boots hit the sand. He was among the first to die over an hour ago. Okay, so what I find most interesting about this subsection of horror stories is its inception. The first reported tale of similar circumstances comes from ancient Greece. During the reign of King Philip II, the father of Alexander the Great. In fact, Alexander was well on his way into the history books at the time of the story's creation. The events were relayed in the form of a letter from a statesman to his friend asking his advice. Supposedly the tale, though extraordinary, was true, and this guy wanted to know if it would be a mistake to inform the king. He was afraid that he'd look like a lunatic. The story involved a young man named Makates, who was visited for 3 nights in a row at the exact same time by a woman named Philonion. The only problem was that Philonion was dead and buried for over a week. The story started out with only Makates having witnessed and consorted with Philonion, a young maiden he knew in life. But as the letter progresses, so too do the number of witnesses. First, the house nurse sees the supposedly dead girl sitting on Makates' bed. By the end of the letter, nearly the entire village is not only aware of Philinaion, but have seen her as well. When finally the mother and father of Philinaion arrived to investigate the extraordinary claim that their deceased daughter had come back to the world of the living, they were speechless because they saw that it was true. Then Philinaion verbally attacked them for several slights inflicted upon her during her life and admonished her parents that they would now have to begin their grieving process anew. And she promptly lay down dead in the bed of Makates. So, as we've seen with these campfire stories, along with hundreds of others, the power of good storytelling can span generations for sure, but can also apparently span the millennia. Thanks for listening. Please make sure you're following The Devil Within wherever you get your podcasts so you never miss an episode. You can also check out our socials at The Devil Within Pod on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. Until next time, stay safe out there. The Devil Within is a Cloud 10 Media production, recorded live at Bel Air Studios in Los Angeles, California. Written and produced by Brandon Morgan. Executive produced by Sim Sarna. Our post-production supervisor is Bruce Whitkin, who also provided original music for this episode. For The Devil Within, I'm your host, Brandon Morgan.